Our top story tonight, NFL cutdown day is in the books. We have the official 53-man roster for all 32 teams. And most importantly, most surprisingly, we got details on Jonathan Taylor trade talks. It didn't go through, but the Green Bay Packers were interested, and we know the Dolphins were interested already, but the ask from the Indianapolis Colts for Jonathan Taylor to the Miami Dolphins is out of this world. We've got that. We've got roster breakdowns and more on Player Profiler Today. Really can't believe this. The arrogance of the Indianapolis Colts. The fact that they not only didn't trade Jonathan Taylor, but what they were demanding from the Miami Dolphins in exchange for Jonathan Taylor. The Indianapolis Colts asked for Jaylen Waddle. Yes, the Colts thought that the running back, who, granted, one of the best running backs in the NFL, but still a running back who's on the last year of his deal, who they don't plan to re-sign, or apparently they do plan to re-sign, just not right now. Regardless, the Colts thought, hey, we have this asset that doesn't want to be here, that wants out, that doesn't really move the needle in terms of wins and losses, but we want one of the most premium assets in return in the NFL. Jaylen Waddle is a premium asset. Jaylen Waddle is a wide receiver one in the NFL. When Tyreek Hill goes, Jaylen Waddle will be a wide receiver one every single year in fantasy. And it wouldn't surprise me if at any point Jaylen Waddle ends up passing Tyreek Hill in the pecking order. He's that damn good. He moves the needle that much with the game-breaking speed, with the ability to take the top off the defense, with the ability to take a short pass and go yard with it, with the route running, which is an underrated asset of Jaylen Waddle's game. Just in no world did this make sense. And that's just the arrogance of the Indianapolis Colts, because they know by asking for Jaylen Waddle in return that there is a 0% chance that gets accepted, which means Jonathan Taylor's not going anywhere, which was the plan all along. But the problem is that doesn't make any sense, because now Jonathan Taylor is headed to the physically unable to perform list. He will miss at least the first 4 games of the season, which also doesn't make sense, both from the Colts and from Jonathan Taylor. Because if Jonathan Taylor wants that mega contract extension and he misses 4 games with injury, whether it's real or not, that's going to be used against him in negotiations next year when he tries to cash in on that big contract. Teams will say, well, you did miss 4 games with your ankle injury. How do we know you're healthy? Since we can't guarantee that you're healthy, we're just going to offer you a little bit less than we would have otherwise. Everything that an NFL team can throw in your face to lower your value, they will do it, because it's a negotiation, and the NFL wants to win all of their negotiations. And if they can use leverage, such as health, such as your position plan running back, they will. So Jonathan Taylor missing these first 4 games doesn't make sense for him to achieve his ultimate goal of getting a huge payday. And it doesn't make sense for the Indianapolis Colts to not have Jonathan Taylor, because A, this is lowering his trade value. If Jonathan Taylor returns and starts running all over the place, then the trade value will start to go back up. But as I just said, with using it as leverage against Jonathan Taylor, teams will use this as leverage against the Colts, saying, hey, he didn't play for 4 games. How do I know he's healthy? I can't guarantee that he's healthy. We're not offering a first-round pick. We're not giving you Jaylen Waddle. And so all around, this move just does not make sense. Jim Irsay, with his sticky fingers all over this situation, trying to pull power moves, trying to get Jonathan Taylor to stay just because he wants him to stay, even though he doesn't plan to pay him. It's all a lot. And it becomes even more when you hear the second team that was in on Jonathan Taylor. And we will get back to that right after this word from the Podfather.
Hey, it's the Podfather of great news. The 2023 Draft Kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team, and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated areas, and that one dynamic for each team that you need to know when making decisions on draft day. And we added a bunch of features. I mean, individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you could take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet. And then in the commissioners section, also brand new this year, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league, do's, don'ts, tips, and what the more innovative fantasy commissioners are doing this year. That's presented by Trophy Smack. The whole package is presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship, the FFPC, Ray Garvin, Derek Brown, the best minds in the industry contributing analysis. It's certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. PlayerProfiler.com/draftkit. PlayerProfiler.com/draftkit. Go get it.
So the second team that was in trade talks for Jonathan Taylor was, in fact, the Green Bay Packers, which I, for one, did not see coming. Aaron Jones just took a restructure that pretty much ties him to the Packers through this year and next year. They kicked the can down the road. Aaron Jones, it would cost more to get rid of Aaron Jones in 2024 than to keep him, so he's staying. But A.J. Dillon is a free agent after the season, so perhaps that was part of the deal. We send you A.J. Dillon and a pick. You send us Jonathan Taylor, because A.J. Dillon was part of that draft class with Jonathan Taylor, with DeAndre Swift, with Cam Akers, with J.K. Dobbins, with Antonio Gibson. All of those players will be free agents after the 2023 NFL season, including Jonathan Taylor. So the Packers, in what was shocking to me, that the Packers were interested in Jonathan Taylor. I did not see that coming at all. But in some world, it does make sense. We get Jonathan Taylor, a do-it-all running back. And it seems as though the Packers are phasing Aaron Jones a little bit out. We've heard reports that A.J. Dillon's going to see more work now that Aaron Rodgers is gone and not calling the shots, not dictating the personnel. But that would have been devastating to everyone who drafted Aaron Jones in fantasy football. Just would have completely ruined him. He'd become a glorified Kareem Hunt in Cleveland behind not a glorified Nick Chubb. Jonathan Taylor is better than Nick Chubb. But yeah, in Dynasty, in whatever. Regardless, this would have been a complete nightmare. Instead, it stays a nightmare just for the Indianapolis Colts, and it's going to be a headache. Zach Moss is going to be the lead back. He's going to be running between the tackles. We saw Deion Jackson playing ahead of Evan Hall. He has some pass-catching prowess as well. But we saw Evan Hall was starting to dominate as a pass protector. He was efficient in the running game. So the Colts backfield is a mess. The running back that you really want is Anthony Richardson. He's going to lead the team in rushing. He's going to lead the team in rushing touchdowns. And that is going to be a nightmare for Zach Moss, for Deion Jackson, for Evan Hall, especially because Anthony Richardson not going to check down the ball a whole lot because he's a mobile quarterback. He's more likely to run than to check it down. And so what could have been if Jonathan Taylor headed to the Miami Dolphins, what thankfully wasn't with Jaylen Waddle heading to the Indianapolis Colts. What a world the NFL is, especially with Jim Irsay trying to become the worst owner. Now that the Commanders have gotten rid of the worst owner in NFL in sports history, Jim Irsay, throwing his hat into the ring, competing with whoever else for the title left vacant by Dan Snyder. Speaking of the NFC East, Albert Okwuegbunam, tight end for the Denver Broncos that we have been fangirling over for years, the athletic freak out of Missouri, he is traded. Sean Payton didn't have a use for him. He's opting instead to go with his guy, Adam Troutman. Greg Dolchich is going to be the receiving tight end, and then they've got Chris Manhertz as well. So Albert O is on his way out. He is heading over to the Philadelphia Eagles, a conditional swap of 6th and 7th round picks in the year 2025. So the Eagles essentially giving up nothing for a shot at a tight end that we at Player Profiler have loved for years. And we saw that talent in the final preseason game. Albert O catches 7 balls over 100 yards. We love Albert O. We would love to see Albert O end up making a difference. And this is a pretty easy depth chart to crack. Obviously, he's not going to impact Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is still one of the top 3 options for the Philadelphia Eagles. It is a consolidated target share across those 3. They're going to gobble it up. But Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra, those are the names in front of Albert O to be that tight end too. And it could very well happen given the talent of Albert Okwuegbunam. We saw some other trades across the NFL. Boogie Basham goes from the Buffalo Bills to the New York Giants in another swap of 6th and 7th round picks in 2025. Giants looking to bolster that pass rush just a little bit. And so they add Boogie Basham. The Bills shed a body. Von Miller going to start the year on a physically unable to perform list, but they still had too many edge rushers. So they send one to the Giants. We thought that the Dolphins, with their trade of Noah Igbinoghene, former first-round pick, heading over to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for Kelvin Joseph, former second-round pick of the Dallas Cowboys. We thought that was a cap-clearing move. We thought that it was a fresh start, and it was a way to get Jonathan Taylor on the team. And it just turned out to not be, which was very disappointing. Speaking of the Dolphins, they also sent Dan Feeney, a guard, backup guard / center, a versatile swingman who can play all 3 interiors position, to the Chicago Bears. And the Bears need it because they're going to be without their left guard, Tevin Jenkins, for the foreseeable future, which is bad if you saw Lucas Patrick play last year. He's going to be now the starting center. Cody Whitehair is going to kick out to left guard. And so the Bears' offensive line has already been downgraded after trying so hard to upgrade throughout the offseason. They're already dealing with injuries. It's not great, so they trade for Dan Feeney. Texans, same issue. Texans look like one of the best offensive lines in the NFL on paper. But their left guard, Kenyon Green, placed on injured reserve. He's out for the season, last year's first-round pick. Their right tackle, Titus Howard, one of the better right tackles in the NFL, he is scheduled to miss week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. He's dealing with an injury. Not expected to miss too much longer than that, but very much in doubt for week 1. And their center, Juice Scruggs, who they just drafted in the 2nd round as well, he is a little bit banged up. So I don't know who's going to start at left guard, right tackle, or center of the Houston Texans in week 1. They trade for Kendrick Green from the Pittsburgh Steelers. They send a 6th rounder to get Kendrick Green, who was an absolute terrible center in his first year trying to replace Marquise Pouncey. Ended up being a pure backup last year, didn't play a snap. Now he's already gone. Hopefully he can offer CJ Stroud a little bit of protection, but either way, this Houston Texans offense, at least week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens, CJ Stroud is going to be under fire. The Ravens are a perfect, absolutely perfect defensive team to pick up for your fantasy football lineups in week 1. And then you can play matchups there. I am all about the matchups on defense. The Ravens versus CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback with no offensive line in front of him. That is a matchup to exploit. We also saw some other trades. Amir Smith-Marset over to the Carolina Panthers from the Kansas City Chiefs in a conditional 7th round swap. And the Chiefs also added Neil Farrell, who was a former late round pick from the Las Vegas Raiders. He is going to step in for Chris Jones as a nose tackle to start the season because Chris Jones not going to be there week 1, probably not there week 2. He says he's not showing up until week 8 unless he gets his contract. We'll see about that, but the Chiefs are making moves to make up for it. And then we saw a bunch of kickers traded. Nick Folk heads from the Patriots to the Titans. Patriots going with rookie Jake Ryland. That was obvious. They drafted him. They're not going to cut a rookie kicker that they drafted. Unlike the Browns, who, not a rookie kicker, but Cade York cut after just 1 season with the Cleveland Browns. Instead, they land Dustin Hopkins, who lost the kicker battle with Dicker, the kicker. Cameron Dicker is Los Angeles Chargers kicker. And Will Lutz, Sean Payton's former kicker with the New Orleans Saints, headed to Denver, and instead the Saints go with Blake Group, who's an undrafted free agent, and that is why you don't draft kickers, because you can get undrafted free agents. You can sign the losers of position battles across the NFL. Never draft a kicker, because then you end up like the Cleveland Browns cutting Cade York, like the Minnesota Vikings cutting Daniel Carlson, who ends up being one of the best kickers in the league for the Las Vegas Raiders. Moving on to some of the actual cuts. We haven't really been through any of the cuts, just the trades, just the rumored trades. But at quarterback and tight end, quarterback especially, there were plenty of moves made, starting with the Patriots, who, what are you doing, Bill Belichick? They cut Bailey Zappe, 4th-round pick from last year, and he's on a pretty bottom-of-the-barrel contract, which means some team's going to claim him, because Bailey Zappe is absolutely a backup quarterback in the NFL. He's going to have a 7, 8, 9, 10-year career as a backup. He is that kind of player. And so for the Patriots to just cut him with the intention of bringing him back to the practice squad, there's no way he's landing on the practice squad. Bailey Zappe will be claimed. He will be a backup quarterback for some other team. And it would have made a little bit more sense if they went with Malik Cunningham, the undrafted free agent out of Louisville who played quarterback and wide receiver. But no, they waive him as well. So now he's subject to waivers too. The Patriots only have Mac Jones as their quarterback. No backup. Hoping to get Bailey Zappe back on the practice squad. This was a bold move by Bill Belichick, who, with his job on the line, I get swing for the fences when your back's against the wall, but this is not a swing for the fences move. This is just a blunder. Was it really worth keeping an extra special teams player, because they have 2 dedicated special teams player on the New England Patriots already, instead of a backup quarterback who is going to be claimed somewhere else? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what Bill Belichick is doing. But Bailey Zappe, for example, you couldn't get a pick out of him if you were planning to cut him, which they obviously want him on the roster. But if Bailey Zappe is getting cut and Josh Dobbs is being traded for the 5th round, how does that make any sense? Bailey Zappe would start for the Arizona Cardinals over Josh Dobbs. Very well could end starting over Clayton Tune. So it just doesn't make sense. How do you not get an asset in return for a backup quarterback when Josh Dobbs just did it? I don't get it. Speaking of the Cardinals, though, they're not going to announce who their starter is. We talked about how they cut Colt McCoy. It's either going to be Clayton Tune or it's going to be Josh Dobbs, because Kyler Murray is going to miss at least the first 4 games on the physically unable to perform list. I think it's going to be Clayton Tune. Either way, it's not going to be pretty for the Arizona Cardinals. But at least with Clayton Tune, it could be fun bad at the very least. They're probably not going to win a whole lot of games, but Clayton Tune could at least be fun. Josh Dobbs, I guess, could be fun too. He had some fun moments for the Titans last year, but really, it's going to be bad. Speaking of other quarterbacks who were moved on, from Max Duggan, 7th-round pick at TCU for the Los Angeles Chargers, they have already cut QB3. I imagine they want to bring him back on the practice squad. But unlike Bailey Zappe, who proved in NFL action that he can get the job done, Max Duggan didn't. Clearly, based on the fact that he was a 7th-round pick, based on the fact that the Chargers didn't see a need to keep him and that they cut him, they're okay exposing him. That is understandable, because the Chargers are saying, hey, this guy isn't that good. Whereas the Patriots, we know Bailey Zappe is pretty good. So it just doesn't make sense. I still don't understand it. Though I do understand the Bears cutting Nathan Peterman and PJ Walker. Knew earlier this week that Walker was cut. It was a battle between Tyson Bagent and Nathan Peterman to be the QB2 behind Justin Fields, and now it is officially Tyson Bagent's job. He absolutely deserves this position. I am so happy for Tyson Bagent, going from Division 3, wherever he was, to a starting quarterback in the NFL. Hats off to Cody Carpentier. He saw this coming months and months ago. We love Tyson Bagent. Should have been drafted, all-time record-throwing quarterback at Shepherd. And now he's a backup quarterback in the NFL. Some other smaller moves. Will Grier is headed to the Cincinnati Bengals. He'll be competing with Jake Brown. The Bengals did cut Trevor Siemian. And the Chiefs cut Shane Buechele. We thought Shane Buechele, whatever, he is cut. Blaine Gabbert ends up winning the job. It looked like he was a lock to make the roster until that final preseason game where he melted down. Blaine Gabbert wins. He will back up Patrick Mahomes. No saying that Shane Buechele can't be brought back on the practice squad, but just wasn't an expected move a couple days ago, if we're being honest. Looking at the tight ends, not a whole lot of movement here. Albert O is the biggest news. Dan Arnold gets cut by the Philadelphia Eagles. He gets replaced by Okwuegbunam. But the Dolphins cut a draft pick. They only had 4 draft picks this year, and the Dolphins cut Elijah Higgins, a wide receiver who was moving to tight end. And instead, they keep Julian Hill, undrafted free agent out of Campbell University. Name I'd never heard of. Name, I guess, to know until the Dolphins make a couple other moves at tight end because they desperately need to. And Durham Smythe. Durham Smythe is once again the starter for the Miami Dolphins. He started over Mike Gesicki last year plenty of times. Sometimes teams just don't make sense. Maybe Elijah Higgins is that bad, but at the same time, you drafted him. You only had 4 picks, and you just completely wasted one. Speaking of wasting picks, by the Minnesota Vikings have cut DeWayne McBride, 7th round pick out of the University of Alabama, Birmingham. Pour one out for DeWayne McBride. We are so sorry. Our friend Bradley Stalder. DeWayne McBride, no matter what, my heart goes out to Bradley Stalder. DeWayne McBride. I did not see this coming. I did not see DeWayne McBride getting cut. But again, our friend Moody Carpentier over at Roster Watch, he was at Minnesota Vikings camp and said, yeah, there's a reason that they're bringing Kareem Hunt in, and that is because behind Alexander Madison and behind Louise, third number 32. Why am I blanking? Oh, Tykevius Chandler. Jeez, I apologize. How could I forget one of my favorite players' names? Behind them, it was looking pretty rough. DeWayne McBride wasn't looking good. Kenny Nwangwu not looking good. So now they bring in Myles Gaskin. He's going to be that running back 3. He can do it all. He can be between the tackles grind if you need him to. He can be pass catching back. Just a veteran presence in the Minnesota Vikings backfield places DeWayne McBride, which is just heartbreaking. We also saw Malik Davis cut by the Dallas Cowboys. They expect to bring him back on the practice squad, but Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn, those are the guys that end up making the roster behind Tony Pollard. The Lions could be in the market for a running back 3. They cut Craig Reynolds, though they could bring him back once they place some players on the injured reserve. But for now, it's just David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Though we'll see who they end up claiming, who they end up adding, whether it's Kareem Hunt, who has 4 offers from teams out there, whether it's Kevin Harris, who I couldn't believe was cut by the New England Patriots, but much like the Detroit Lions, the Patriots are just going with 2 running backs to start the season. They cut Kevin Harris. They cut Ty Montgomery. They cut J.J. Taylor. It is just Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott in the Patriots backfield. They've got to add someone back there. I just don't know who it's going to be. Could be Trey Sermon, who was cut by the Philadelphia Eagles, which is funny based on all the reports that we heard. Oh, Rashad Penny's behind Trey Sermon. Oh, they really like Trey Sermon. That is why you have to be very careful with who you consume, content you read, who you trust, because there was no world where Trey Sermon made this team over Rashad Penny. There was a world where Rashad Penny got cut, but not for the expense of Trey Sermon. But looking at some of the players that did make the roster, undrafted free agents that did make the roster, unfortunately, Deneric Prince is one of him. He ended up getting cut by the Kansas City Chiefs. Hopefully he returns on the practice squad because I think the guy's got talent. But this also goes to show the people, oh, Isaiah Pacheco, he's a bad pick because Deneric Prince is going to be taking touches from him. We're just completely wrong. But looking at the undrafted free agents who actually made the roster, Keaton Mitchell ends up making the roster. Instead, the Baltimore Ravens cut Melvin Gordon. Now, there is a chance that Keaton Mitchell could be placed on IR for a shoulder injury, but making the roster is a big first step. Keaton Mitchell versus Justice Hill, that is a bet between Billy Muzio and the Podfather. Part of a larger bet, but who do you have? Justice Hill or Keaton Mitchell? Are you with the Podfather, with Justice Hill, or are you with Billy Muzio and Keaton Mitchell? I side with Justice Hill. I think that with this wide open Georgia-style offense Todd Monken's going to be bringing in, that is going to help Justice Hill excel. But we'll see. We'll also see what happens with Amari DiMercado out of TCU. He ends up making the Arizona Cardinals as the running back 3. Jaleel McLaughlin makes the Denver Broncos behind Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams. Emmanuel Wilson is the running back 3 for the Green Bay Packers behind A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones and almost behind Jonathan Taylor. Elijah Dotson makes the Los Angeles Chargers, and that is a name that I would keep an eye on. He flashed throughout the preseason. He looked like an Austin Eckler 2.0. He's going to start the season behind Joshua Kelly, behind Isaiah Spiller, but with what we saw in the preseason, with the electric athleticism that we saw, Elijah Watson very well could end up becoming the RB2 for the Chargers at some point. This is an easy depth chart to crack. As for the Dolphins end up keeping 5 running backs. They obviously keep Jeff Wilson. They obviously keep Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. They keep Savon Ahmed, and they keep Chris Brooks, undrafted free agent as well. And it's interesting. It's interesting with the running back market the way that it is, and with so many running backs wanting a raise, wanting to be paid what they're worth. And then you get all these undrafted free agents making a roster, because running back is a very easy position to transition from college to the NFL. It is one of the easier transitions, and it's one of the less valuable positions. It just sucks because I am so happy that all of these undrafted free agents made the roster. They deserve it. It is a wonderful story. But with undrafted free agents making the roster, and some of them likely showing out during the season, that is just going to lower the value of running back even more. Such is life, say la vie. Looking at the wide receiver position, not a whole lot of crazy movement here. Congrats to Justin Ross for making the Kansas City Chiefs roster. That was lovely to see. They kept 7 wide receivers. I haven't placed Kadarius Toney on injured reserve yet. We'll see if that ends up happening. Speaking of Giants wide receivers on injured reserve, Wan'Dale Robinson comes off the PUP list. He will hopefully play in week 1, but if not, he is not going to miss the first 4 games of the season. Wan'Dale Robinson will make his return in short order. Love to see that. Unfortunate to report that Jalen Reagor has been cut by the Minnesota Vikings. They tried to trade him. They tried to shop him. Didn't work. Now Jalen Reagor ends up on the street. We'll see where he gets picked up. Not uncommon for first-round picks at wide receiver to just completely bust, to completely flame out and then bounce around the NFL. We saw Corey Coleman on a team earlier this offseason. I think he was with the Kansas City Chiefs. We see it all the time. We saw with N'Keal Harry had a cup of coffee with the Minnesota Vikings, who also cut Jalen Reagor, also cut Jawan Williams. So the Vikings had the first-round pick and the second-round pick of the New England Patriots in camp this year, and neither made the roster. Just goes to show how bad Bill Belichick has been in recent years and how much worse it is going to get. Could this be the last season with Bill Belichick as the head coach of the New England Patriots? If they miss the playoffs, it very well could be coming. Robert Kraft has alluded to it earlier this offseason. Bill Belichick could be on his way out. Chosen Robbie Anderson. He's changed his name again. I can't remember if it's Robbie Chosen or Chosen Robbie. He has been cut by the Miami Dolphins. Instead, they rework the contract of Cedric Wilson. They free up $3 million in cap space, which again we thought was going to go for Jonathan Taylor. It does not. They don't make that trade. We'll see if Jonathan Taylor gets traded at the line. For now, he's just out there in limbo with the Indianapolis Colts, missing 4 games at the very minimum. And finally, our final news isn't a transaction, isn't a cut, isn't someone making the roster. Instead, it is the return to practice of Jackson Smith-Njigba. Jackson Smith-Njigba broke a bone in his wrist, broke one of the small bones in the wrist, had surgery, had it repaired, and now he is back at practice. He's wearing a cast, but the fact that JSN is already out there practicing, the fact that even with a broken wrist, he is out there catching passes. He's not catching them well because he's got a cast on his hand, not catching them like this, but he's still able to hold on to the ball with a broken wrist. Body catch it, whatever. Jackson Smith-Njigba might miss week 1, but I hope you bought the dip, because Jackson Smith-Njigba is still going to ball out for the Seattle Seahawks. I cannot wait to see what happens this season. We are just days away from the kickoff of the NFL season. Get to see Jackson Smith-Njigba, get to see the Detroit Lions, get to see the Kansas City Chiefs, get to see all of these teams, all of these players. Now the 53-man roster is set. We are in for a beautiful season.